4 years, one absence puzzled observers: Jessica Mulroney's sudden silence. She had been visible, connected, and then gone. The official story cited fallout and cancellation, yet online skepticism never faded. According to sources, archived posts vanished, timelines blurred, and friendships cooled without explanation. Critics speculate the break concealed something more complex than a public disagreement. Unverified screenshots allegedly circulated, hinting at pressure behind the scenes. Documents circulated online suggest legal caution, not closure. Viewers noticed careful phrasing, delayed responses, and a pattern of avoidance. Tonight, we examine reported claims, leaked material descriptions, and digital traces to understand why questions persist. This is not a verdict. It is an analysis of gaps, timing, and silence that still unsettle those watching globally. The silence did not arrive all at once. According to observers, it settled gradually, noticeable only in hindsight. Jessica Mulroney's public presence diminished after years of visibility tied to fashion, media, and a high-profile friendship. Fans who followed closely began asking where she had gone and why explanations felt incomplete. The official narrative referenced controversy and withdrawal, but online skepticism persisted. Critics speculated that the story presented publicly failed to account for timing, tone, and the absence of closure. Archived posts appeared to disappear, comments were limited, and familiar connections went quiet without formal acknowledgement. According to sources cited in online forums, the friendship had long appeared asymmetrical. One side carried increasing global influence, while the other navigated a more constrained public role. Analysts note that power imbalances can complicate personal relationships, particularly when one party's platform expands rapidly. Viewers revisiting old footage claim to see moments where deference and alignment seemed expected rather than organic. None of this proves intent, but it fueled questions about how influence may have shaped decisions. As the narrative circulated, online investigators began collecting timelines. Archived material appears to show periods of frequent collaboration followed by abrupt gaps. Critics allege these gaps align with moments of heightened public scrutiny elsewhere. Documents circulated online suggest that legal considerations may have influenced silence, pointing to non-disclosure agreements commonly used in high-profile circles. While NDAs are standard, their presence often intensifies curiosity rather than resolving it. The absence of direct denial or clarification allowed speculation to grow. Attention turned to alleged communications described by commentators. Unverified screenshots allegedly indicated exchanges that felt controlling in tone, though details remained vague. Analysts cautioned that screenshots can be misleading without context, yet the descriptions contributed to unease. Viewers noticed how statements, when they did appear, were carefully worded, avoiding specifics. According to critics, this restraint suggested caution rather than reconciliation. Toronto-era social dynamics became central to analysis. According to sources familiar with that period, social circles overlapped at private clubs and industry gatherings. These environments, critics argue, can amplify hierarchy and access. Archived material appears to show repeated proximity at events, prompting viewers to question whether boundaries blurred. Analysts stress that proximity alone does not indicate manipulation, but patterns of access can shape relationships subtly over time. The discussion expanded to alleged third-party roles. Online investigators speculated that intermediaries may have facilitated communication or separation, though no evidence confirms coordination. Critics believe the involvement of advisors or legal counsel could explain the abruptness of the silence. Documents circulated online suggest consultations occurred around the same period as public withdrawal. Again, correlation does not establish causation, but the alignment deepens suspicion. As weeks turned into months, the lack of reconciliation became part of the story. According to observers, friendships under strain often produce conflicting accounts, yet here there was little counter-narrative. The vacuum was filled by interpretation. Analysts noted that silence in high-profile disputes can function as risk management, allowing controversy to dissipate without engagement. In this case, it appeared to sustain interest instead. Media scholars highlighted the role of digital archives. Screenshots from the Wayback Machine, cached pages, and preserved posts allowed audiences to compare versions of the past. Archived material appears to show language and affiliations that later vanished. Critics argue that routine updates cannot fully explain selective removals. Analysts counter that websites evolve constantly. The debate itself underscored how transparency expectations collide with brand management. Throughout this phase, careful language mattered. According to commentators, statements avoided direct accusations while acknowledging strain. This ambiguity became a focal point. Viewers asked whether the absence of clarity was protective or coercive. Critics speculated that psychological pressure could manifest through uncertainty, though such claims remain unproven. The framing stayed cautious, emphasizing analysis over assertion. By the end of this stage, the story was no longer about a single incident. It had become an examination of patterns: disappearance, archival gaps, cautious phrasing, and sustained silence. According to analysts, these elements combined to create a sense of unresolved tension. Nothing confirmed wrongdoing, yet nothing fully dispelled doubt. The friendship's collapse appeared less like a clean break and more like a managed withdrawal, leaving observers to wonder what pressures shaped it and why answers remained elusive. As scrutiny deepened, attention moved from personalities to infrastructure and timing. According to sources, online investigators compared archived records, cached pages, and subtle edits that appeared over months. Critics speculate that selective removals can shape narratives without issuing statements. Documents circulated online suggest dates and affiliations once visible later vanished. Analysts caution that websites change routinely, yet viewers notice consistency in what disappeared. The timing aligned with heightened scrutiny elsewhere, raising questions about motive. No record proves coordination, but the convergence unsettled observers. Silence from principals persisted, encouraging crowdsourced analysis that treated absence as data rather than coincidence. Financial questions emerged next, framed cautiously as transparency concerns rather than accusations. According to online investigators, non-profit disclosures and comparable filings became reference points for comparison. Public records appear to show reporting thresholds that vary, complicating interpretation. Critics allege that when roles change quietly, accountability becomes harder to trace. Archived material appears to show titles shifting across periods without explanation. Analysts stress such shifts can be administrative. Still, viewers questioned why clarifications never followed. The lack of contextual statements allowed speculation to persist, with audiences mapping possibilities while acknowledging uncertainty and resisting definitive conclusions through careful language and measured skepticism. Attention returned to interpersonal dynamics described in reported accounts from earlier years. According to sources familiar with Toronto social circles, proximity at private venues fostered blurred boundaries. Critics speculate that access can translate into influence, especially when careers intersect. Archived photos and attendance lists allegedly indicate repeated closeness, though context remains disputed. Analysts emphasize that social overlap is common in such environments. Yet viewers perceived asymmetry, noting who benefited from visibility and who absorbed risk. These perceptions fueled debate about power, consent, and expectation, without asserting wrongdoing or intent within evolving friendships shaped by public attention and intense scrutiny worldwide. Legal considerations became a recurring theme in commentary. According to documents circulated online, non-disclosure agreements are routine among high-profile figures, often discouraging public clarification. Critics allege that NDAs can function as silences even absent wrongdoing. Analysts counter that such agreements protect privacy and reputations. Viewers noted lawyer involvement referenced obliquely in interviews, suggesting caution. The timing of legal consultations reportedly coincided with withdrawal from public platforms. Correlation alone proves nothing. Nevertheless, the pattern reinforced a sense that constraints, not indifference, shaped the quiet during periods of heightened scrutiny and reputational risk across multiple overlapping professional contexts and public narratives globally. Alleged digital material featured prominently in debates, though specifics remained guarded. According to critics, descriptions of messages emphasized tone rather than content. Unverified screenshots allegedly suggested pressure, but analysts warned against extrapolation. Metadata, dates, and devices were discussed cautiously by independent researchers. Viewers noticed how references stayed abstract, avoiding reproduction of materials. This restraint preserved privacy while amplifying mystery. The absence of full disclosure invited competing readings, each plausible yet unconfirmed. Observers concluded that implication, not revelation, power the controversy within a landscape conditioned to reward ambiguity and engagement across platforms, audiences, and evolving news cycles without definitive corroboration anywhere. Third parties were discussed carefully, framed as contextual figures rather than culprits. According to sources, advisors, friends, and colleagues can mediate conflict inadvertently. Critics speculate intermediaries may carry messages, shaping outcomes indirectly. Analysts stress there is no proof of orchestration. Still, patterns of access and timing prompted inquiry. Archived calendars and event lists allegedly aligned with moments of tension. Viewers asked whether facilitation occurs by design or convenience. The analysis remained cautious, focusing on structural dynamics instead of personal blame or definitive claims within complex organizations navigating scrutiny and reputation management under intense public observation and relentless online commentary cycles. Media response evolved from gossip to process-oriented inquiry. According to commentators, the shift reflected fatigue with sensationalism and appetite for evidence. Critics framed the story as a case study in narrative control. Analysts highlighted how silence can stabilize or destabilize depending on context. Viewers tracked how statements were timed, how platforms were chosen, and how language avoided specificity. Each choice fed interpretation. The resulting discourse prioritized patterns over incidents, asking what accumulation signaled without asserting certainty while acknowledging uncertainty and resisting premature conclusions about motives, influence, and the mechanics of separation within elite public spheres and mediated relationships worldwide today. By this stage, the inquiry centered on why resolution never arrived. According to observers, closure requires acknowledgement, which remained absent. Critics speculated that strategic ambiguity protected multiple interests simultaneously. Analysts reiterated that absence of proof precludes judgment. Yet the emotional effect on audiences persisted, driven by unresolved inconsistencies. Archived traces, cautious language, and prolonged silence combined into an enduring puzzle. The analysis concluded not with answers, but with disciplined restraint, recognizing that uncertainty itself can shape narratives long after events recede within ecosystems that reward attention, debate, and speculation without delivering definitive closure or certainty for concerned observers everywhere online. As the discussion matured, analysts began interrogating the mechanics of silence itself. According to media observers, prolonged quiet can function as a strategy rather than an absence. Viewers noted how the lack of definitive statements allowed multiple interpretations to coexist, each drawing energy from the same gaps. Critics speculate that when reputational stakes are high, ambiguity can be safer than clarity. It avoids escalation while preserving flexibility. In this case, the continued quiet kept attention alive, sustaining curiosity without inviting rebuttal. Patterns and timing became increasingly central. According to online investigators, moments of withdrawal appeared synchronized with external pressures, suggesting responsiveness to context rather than coincidence. Archived material appears to show pauses in activity aligning with major news cycles. Analysts caution that correlation is not causation, yet audiences perceived rhythm where official explanations offered none. This rhythm fueled theories about coordination, even as commentators reiterated that no evidence confirms orchestration. The role of narrative framing drew scrutiny. According to critics, early explanations emphasized controversy resolution, while later silence avoided revisiting the issue. Viewers questioned whether the initial framing served to close the story prematurely. Analysts highlighted how first impressions anchor public understanding, making later clarification less necessary. The absence of follow-up statements allowed that anchor to hold, despite unresolved questions raised by archived records and reported claims. Attention also turned to reputational asymmetry. According to observers, one party's global platform afforded insulation from rumor, while the other faced disproportionate consequences. Critics argue this imbalance can influence decisions about speaking or remaining silent. Analysts stress that power differentials do not imply misconduct, but they shape outcomes. Viewers perceived that the cost of clarification may have been unevenly distributed, reinforcing the sense that silence served some interests better than others. Online investigations increasingly emphasized methodology over conclusion. According to independent researchers, cross-referencing archives, timelines, and public statements reveals patterns but not proof. This approach reframed the controversy as an exercise in critical reading. Viewers learned to weigh absence, phrasing, and timing. Analysts noted that such literacy reflects an audience adapting to information scarcity, where implication often substitutes for evidence. The conversation expanded to the ethics of speculation. Critics cautioned that interpreting gaps risks unfair inference. Others argued that scrutiny is warranted when public narratives conflict with archived traces. Analysts proposed a middle ground: document inconsistencies without asserting intent. This posture characterized much of the later discourse, which focused on questions rather than claims, and process rather than personalities. Third-party mediation remained ambiguous. According to sources, advisors and intermediaries can shape outcomes simply by managing access. Critics speculate that gatekeeping influences perception by determining who speaks and when. Analysts counter that such roles are standard and protective. Viewers observed that mediation often leaves no public record, complicating accountability while preserving plausible deniability. The uncertainty reinforced the theme that influence can operate invisibly. As time passed, attention drifted from specific allegations to systemic implications. According to commentators, the episode illustrates how modern reputations are managed through silence as much as speech. Archived deletions, cautious language, and delayed responses form a toolkit for navigating scrutiny. Viewers questioned whether transparency expectations are realistic within elite circles. Analysts suggested that opacity may be normalized, even accepted, when visibility carries risk. The emotional tone of discussion remained restrained yet unsettled. According to observers, unresolved narratives provoke discomfort precisely because they resist closure. Audiences accustomed to clear endings found ambiguity destabilizing. Critics argue this discomfort drives continued engagement. Analysts observe that uncertainty can be more compelling than confirmation, sustaining attention long after initial interest fades. As the inquiry reached this point, the emphasis returned to evidence thresholds. According to independent researchers, the available material supports questions but not conclusions. This distinction became central to responsible analysis. Viewers were encouraged to separate documented inconsistencies from inferred motives. Analysts stressed that restraint preserves credibility, even when curiosity persists. Ultimately, the story settled into an open frame. According to commentators, it stands as a case study in how friendships fracture under scrutiny, how silence communicates without speaking, and how archives challenge official narratives without resolving them. The absence of definitive answers became the defining feature. Viewers are left weighing patterns against proof, implication against fact. The questions remain, suspended between what is known and what is suggested, inviting continued observation rather than final judgment. If you have stayed through this analysis, it is because uncertainty matters. This story was not built to deliver verdicts, but to examine patterns, timing, and silence. According to observers, the most consequential questions emerge where explanations stop. What does it mean when archives change, language tightens, and responses never arrive? Now the responsibility shifts to the audience. Review the material. Compare timelines. Notice what is said and what is avoided. Decide for yourself whether the gaps point to coincidence, caution, or something else entirely. Reasonable people can disagree, and that disagreement is the point. If you value careful, allegation-aware investigations that slow the noise and focus on evidence thresholds, subscribe to the channel. Turn on notifications so you are present when new records, statements, or context add clarity or complicate the picture further. Join the conversation thoughtfully in the comments. Share sources, question assumptions, and keep the line between proof and speculation clear. In an era where implication spreads faster than facts, disciplined skepticism is essential. We will continue to track updates, preserve archives, and analyze developments without rushing to conclusions. Stay curious, stay measured, and stay engaged as this story evolves. Your attention shapes accountability in public narratives.